Hello everyone! Welcome to Control-Alt-Delete Tutorials. I am Ellen, your Maya Master for the next following tutorial. Today we're doing more of a concept. This does pertain to rigging and it does pertain to animation in general, and we are going to be looking at the point constraint. In terms of rigging, it's a constraint that you are going to be controlling the movement of an object by something else. In terms of animating, a use for this point constraint is the idea if you have a character rig and you want that character to hold something and you don't want to animate it holding, as in you don't want to animate key by key something staying inside a character's hand. It'd be great if it just stays in there generally. That's what the point constraint is for. Now you might ask, well, why don't I just parent it if there's something I want my character to hold? The idea of a constraint is you can actually animate said parent. As in, I can have my character hold something and then actually put it down on a table or throw it into the air. So there's always going to be the idea of a benefit with this constraint because you can actually animate the character holding something and most importantly letting it go. A parent is just on. A parent is always going to hold it and that's it. So the idea, if you have a character that is going to be holding something and needs to let it go, or if they don't have anything and they need to pick something up, that's what the point constraint is for. So I'm going to use just a nice little simple sphere as like a little ball for my example. But again, this applies to anything that you're working with, any kind of object, again, being swords, whatever the character wants to hold. And just so I can get a kind of a size reference, I'm going to put him near his sphere for a little bit. That's looks better for the palm. Okay, so you have your object. Whatever you want your character to be holding, you have to have it. So for the point constraint to work is you are looking basically at creating targets, the places where this object is going to be and what's actually going to control it. Because the idea with this constraint is you are actually never going to animate this object, that you are going to be using it for just basically a dummy, and the targets, like the hand for example, are what you're going to animate with, because it will be holding it. So you have an object, but you have to create the targets. And what I always suggest people use for these targets are called locators. And this is under Create menu, and then down towards the bottom, Locator. And what a locator is it's basically a node, that it is just a crosshair that shows a pivot point. And it doesn't have to be there, it can be over here. But it's literally just a crosshair thing. Again, it's kind of dark here. I'll change its color real quick just so you guys can see it better. Ding. And we'll do something yellow. Okay, so you can see it better. So we have a really nice little locator. So the idea of a point constraint, you are going to need an object and two targets. So in this case, two locators. So I just did Control D to duplicate my locator. And here they are, separate. So with the locators, these are representing where your object is going to be placed. So wherever your starting place is for this object, again, if the idea if he's picking it up, this is your world. This is my starting point. So I'm going to call this locator world, and then just LOC for locator. And then the second one is the target of where the ball is actually going. And again, the idea of a character picking it up, this is going to be in my character's hand. So I'm going to name this one hand, LOC for locator. So the idea is you're going to be basically constraining this object to follow the locators, that these locators are going to control their movement. So you do need to do some positioning. So one that's going to be in my hand needs to be obviously near the hand. One that's going to be in the world, this is your starting point, you put it wherever the animation starts and that object needs to be. Now the important thing to know with this point constraint is the fact that it is going to be applied based on the pivot of your object. So my default sphere right now, the pivot point is in the center of the sphere. You know, works great, that's perfectly fine. But let's say you had a sword that your character is going to be holding. You need to make sure that that pivot is where the character should be holding it, so the handle of the sword. Aligning your pivot into that place. Because when this constraint is applied, this object is going to literally jump to its target based on the pivot of the object and the pivot of the target. So same idea with this target for my hand. If I put it in the hand, that means my ball will actually go in the surface of the hand. That's not what we want. We want it to make it look like the hand is actually holding it. So the pivot, this locator target, should actually be lower. I'm going to go to my other views for a second, kind of line it up. After it's applied, you can still adjust it. It's not like it's set in stone forever, so you will have some flexibility. So you're going to have some locations. Where'd you go? Okay. So I set this up. So I've got my world. Again, imagine there's a really great model table right here that this ball will be sitting on. And then my hand that is actually going to be holding it. Now, since it's going to be holding the hand, and more than likely you're animating the hand, we do need to parent this in. And this is just a regular parent. You need to parent it into your hand so that way you have the ability for it to follow along with your animation. You have a couple options where you can parent it. And this, again, really depends on what kind of animation you're doing and really your character rig you're working with. This particular rig has a little control for the hand joint itself to be flexible. I could parent it to that. If you don't have one of those, you can just parent it straight to your wrist, which I'll do because that's going to be the more common option. So I'm going to select my hand locator and shift select my wrist control and just regular P for parent. Visually, what's going to happen is you select your wrist control or whatever you parent it to. It's going to highlight, showing that it's connected. I rotate, it rotates with me. So that locator is now connected. Again, one over here is to your world. It doesn't have to be anywhere. It can just be on its own. Alright, my locators for my locations. It's another reason I like locators. Kind of stands for location. They are in place. I've got my object. So now I can actually apply my constraint. So you're going to go up to your constraint menu. Again, make sure you're in the animation menu set. You can go up to constraint menu, and we're going to again be using the point constraint. Now you do need to select these in the proper order for this to work. And the idea of a constraint is you are going to select the target location first, then shift select your object. The order that you do this, in terms of, you have multiple locations, multiple targets, is really up to you. The way I like to think about it is, where is the animation going to start for that object? Select that one first. So in this case, if my guy is actually going to pick this up, I'm going to start at the wall, the magic table, because that's where the ball would be to start with. So whatever is your first location, select that target, shift select your object, and under constraint menu, apply the point constraint. And it didn't move, so hold on, let me undo. I did it wrong. Okay, what is going on? Of course, we've already got this all. Okay. The reason mine didn't work. I didn't open the option box, which normally you shouldn't have to, but the reason it didn't work, because physically it should have jumped. When you open your option box for the point constraint, you need to make sure maintain offset is actually turned off. It's not checked. If it's checked, that's why nothing actually happened. So when I have this unchecked and all my constraints are turned on and I apply, it jumps. This is what I wanted to see. This is what didn't happen. So again, if it's the first time you're using the constraint, it should have been there by default. Apparently I had left it on from something I had done before. So to be safe, open your option box, make sure maintain offset is off, and then you can apply it. And again, success, your object will have jumped to the locator. On the object itself, in the channel box, your 3 translates will be blue. Blue represents constraints. So that is a really good sign to see. Another way you can tell if it's working, if you select that target, that locator, and move it around, the ball moves with it. So location 1, target 1 is acquired. So now we need target 2. So again, selecting your target first, shift select that same object, and apply the point constraint again. And it will jump. This time though, when you apply the second object, the second target, for your object, it's not going to make it all the way over. You can see it moved, but it didn't actually make it all the way over. And we're going to go over why. So this is still successful even though it doesn't look right yet. So again, your object itself still has the blue in the translates. The locator is completely clean in the channel box. but it does have the ability to control the movement of your object. It's not lined up yet, but I'm going to show you why. But it is working. The first one, it is still working. Now, the reason it is floating in between these is because this point constraint has been applied to two objects, and right now it believes it has to follow both of them. We need to tell it to only follow one. So if you select your object, in the channel box on the right, you will find your point constraint, and you will see your node state, which is normal, which is basically that it's working, so just leave that as it is. If you've applied it and it's not in the right place, you do have the ability to change its offset, which will slightly move it. Honestly, your better option is to move your locators, adjust these. Animating with an offset can be difficult, but what you really want to look at are your weights below, that you have world locator, W0 stands for weight, 0 being the initial, hand locator W1, which is weight 1, which is your second target. So these are the two targets we applied. And if you look at the values, they're both set to 1, which means they're both on. That's why it's floating. It's following both locations. So if we start changing these values, you're going to see the ball actually jump back and forth. So if I set world to 1 and hand locator to 0, it jumps back. Now it's only going to follow this locator. I can rotate my wrist and nothing happens. If I do it reverse, I set world to 0, hand to 1. Now it will follow just my hand and not the original locator. Now again, this is where I said you still have some flexibility. I've applied it to this locator, and you can look at, is it really in your hand? You know, does the character look like he is actually holding it? Is it too far? You know, you don't want it in the hand, the actual geometry. You want it to look like it's actually in the palm of your character's hand. So I can make a little adjustment still with that locator. I can, you know, move it around if I need to. I can actually look at my hand finger controls, rotate them so it looks like it's actually holding it. Oh, so much more realistic. You know, same for the thumb. Rotate my thumb down. Oh, he's holding the ball. It's amazing because of the point constraint. Now, again, with this, these are just extra little finger controls. You may have actual circles. You may have something over on the right, you know, to use for attributes. Those don't matter, again, because it is connected to my wrist. As soon as I rotate my wrist, that's when it's going to move and follow along. So in terms of animating, if you're going to animate this, because again, the idea of this point constraint is it's on the ground and then you pick it up, you're going to animate it. But the trick is you are never animating the sphere, whatever your object is. That is now taken over. Its position is controlled because of this constraint. It's blue. So if you ever accidentally key this object, as in just S set key, you're going to see green. Green is bad. Green means that it has two connections, and you'll even see it below that it has this new attribute called blend, and if you go and rotate your hand, you'll see it's not following along anymore and you broke it. So if you ever see green, green's bad. And in this case, what green is actually representing is my object has a keyframe and it has a constraint, so it's following the keyframe right now, no longer my constraint. If I delete that keyframe, poof, blue back, and I'm working just fine. So just be aware of that for animating. It's you're not actually animating the object anymore, it's you are animating your constraint. If you need to see the keys of the constraint as you're working, you can actually do that. If you can find it in your actual outliner, it will be connected to your object where you can see the actual point constraint itself. So you can actually see keys as you're working. And again, the idea of what we're doing, I'm going to switch this back to starting on the ground. Get that one back there. Is you're keying this constraint basically on and off. That for this magic animation, I have my object, and I'm just going to bring it a little bit closer, on my ground, and I need to stay on my ground. So I've got an animation of, you know, something really fantastic happening, and I'm going to key my constraint, my point constraint, so my world and my hand are set with world at 1, hand at 0. I can select those actual attributes, right-click them, and do a key select. Now I can move forward And what's great with the constraint is you can actually blend this. So if we pretend he's a magician, even though this will be really poor animation, I can switch these weights. So world is 0, hand is 1, and do again another key select. And if I scrub, you'll see my ball magically goes up to my hand. Now again, what you would really want is something that's much closer so you're not breaking any illusion of weight. Again, this is really sad and pathetic looking. So if I animate, you know, my arms actually going down and reaching to pick this up, that'd be a little bit more realistic. So here, if I can, you know, rotate down, get some keys. Oh, I didn't actually key that. Rotate down. All right, so there. Keyed, keyed, keyed. All right, you're rotating. All right, so my wrist then rotates. So there. So it looks like I'm going to go and actually pick up the ball, and then I'll actually pick up the actual object. Now again, I don't have my full rig shown, so I would obviously make that a lot closer. Again, I could start with that locator and actually bring that one a little closer to it so it looks like it's going to, you know, actually pick it up better. I can look at my wrist and actually make it look like I'm rotating it into the hand. You know, work to your camera. Look, I picked it up. And then as you move along, for whatever your arm magic happens to be doing, so I've got my object, I'm going to raise it up, and then, you know, play baseball and throw it. So obviously you're going to spend more time animating your arm, but again, the idea, the concept of the object is you're animating your constraint, that you have a key that is your initial keyframe that holds the ball on your world. So world is 1, hand is 0. And then your next key is the switch where hand is 1, world is 0. And I can actually bring that a lot closer together so they don't look like it's floating so much. That looks like a lift. Again, that's still a jump from my positioning, so just because I'm picky here, pretend this is my starting point. Okay, so magic table, ball sitting on it, arm rotates down to pick up the object, and it picks it up. So the idea is, again, that constraint on the object for those keyframes, you have your initial, which holds it in your world, your first location, and then you have a keyframe that switches it. I now am under my hand, and since my hand's in the magic place for it, it looks like it magically picks it up and then has it. Now if you had another location, another thing your object had to do, as in I picked up a ball and I'm throwing it, I would create a third locator, and I'd create it up here. So that way, once I get my, you know, nice little arm proper swinging going on, I'd have another keyframe that I keep it into the hand, that entire sequence, and then I move a frame or two ahead and I switch it to another locator, which you could call like a throw locator or something, and then animate that actually being thrown. So you're switching these key values. Again, wherever that value is 1, that's the location it's going to follow. So these keys for that point constraint switch, they can be frame by frame. They can literally be one frame next to each other. They can be spread out. Again, if you're dropping it, you can have those keys a little spread out a little bit more so it looks like it floats down. Again, just be aware of your weight so it looks realistic. But that's, again, you as the animator. Now, the thing to be aware of with this is right now it picks it up and it looks fantastic. I mean, it's bad animation, but you know, it still looks fantastic for the pickup. So the thing you need to be aware of, though, is right now this is just being translated. This object has no rotation applied. So for a sphere, it looks fantastic. But again, let's say you're doing a sword. The sword on its own might not look so right because there's no rotation. So I'm going to destroy my sphere for a second just so we can pretend it's, you know, sword. So great, awesome, you know, blade for this sword. So I can still go, use the same keys, pick it up, and then I can lift it. Alright, so here's the idea that's not really right, is your alignment. Think of the idea of that wrist as it's holding that object, as it's coming up. If I rotate my wrist to hold my object, imagine the sword that would actually be in the hand, the hilt in your character's hand, the blade would be turning. Again, there's no rotation being applied, just position. So my blade has actually nothing going on right now. So that's not, not very good. You could, if you wanted to, rotate this by hand, but if you're going to do your manual rotation to keep this alignment, you just have to be very aware you don't hit S to set the key. You need to do a key select on your rotations. Or you can do another constraint. And these can be applied at any point. That's really the great thing with constraint. You can apply them at the beginning, you can apply them in the middle, at the end, it doesn't matter. They will still hold. Because a point constraint does positioning. It does your translation. If you look in that constraint list, there's a whole bunch of things going on here. There is also orient. Orient is going to refer to your rotation. So I'm going to apply this where I'm actually being picked up, just so I can have a better idea. So I need to find which one is hand. Alright, my crooked one is hand. Again, you'd apply them to both, just like the others, but I'm just going to stick with this one to show you, so the tutorial doesn't get too long. I'm selecting my hand locator, shift selecting the sword, again, pretend sword, and applying the orient constraint. Again, I'm going to open the option box and reset just to make sure, yep, because it was on from something else. So resetting it, so maintain offset is still off, and I am going to apply. And again, like the point constraint rotated, the sword rotated. So now, as I go through and pick it up, and now I rotate my wrist, my sword rotates as well. So now I've got a much better alignment. Now, issue with that is, as you can see, as I'm coming down before I've lifted it, it's already rotating. That's because there's only one constraint on here. So this is the same idea with the other constraint. With the point, you need two locations, so you have two orientations. So right before that, I'm going to grab my original locator, shift select my sword, and do the same orient constraint. Set my hand off, so I'm now down to my original one and I can key this in place. Go forward a couple frames when I know it picks it up, switch my weight, and do another key select. So now it follows. Again, this way it stays completely still before I pick up the sword. Then once I pick it up, again, it's timed off, but you get the idea. Once I pick it up, it now follows the rotation of my character's hand, and it lifts with it. Now there's a caveat to here that you might see, and this really depends on the model particularly. The orientation of that sword might not look right. It might look like, you applied it and then it rotated back into the hand and you can't change it. So I'm going to show you just real quick how to fix that. I'm going to delete the constraint and reapply it just so you can see. So whenever you apply an orient constraint, the orient is again based off the pivots, and if your pivots don't line up perfectly, again this being the actual XYZ axis alignment, if those don't line up, that's why it shifts. That's why it rotates on you. So what you can do if you have something really particular, like the way he needs to hold it, when you go to the constraint and apply the orient, you can actually use maintain offset. Again, what this maintain offset means is it's going to keep this alignment when it applies it. It's not going to do the jump. Again, originally when my little point constraint messed up, it didn't move, is because I had offset turned on. So again, this keeps this original rotation. So when I apply, it doesn't turn up into his hand this time. It's still working. It still works perfectly fine, and actually it works better because it's now rotating with it. He's holding it the way he's supposed to. I still need to do the thing before of, add in the other one, so that way it, I can turn it off, so I can still key it. So I've got, my original positioning, and then go to my hand, switch them, key, so then he actually picks up the sword, poof, selection, and then lift. So orient constraint is going to refer to your rotation. Again, if he has to hold it a really particular way, make sure you maintain the offset so it keeps that position of this in his hand. And then you do the same thing when you throw the object. Add in the third target so it follows that rotation as it flies through the air, and you can make it, spin or whatever, curveball, whatever you want to do. So that's a constraint. Again, at the most basic form, you have your object, you have at least two targets. Again, I just like locators, they don't render, they very clearly show your pivots. You select your locator first, shift select your object, and apply that. There is no limits of locations for locators you can use with this. You can keep adding as many targets as you need for that object. And again, the idea, you animate the locator. You no longer animate your object. And then that should work. And again, if you're finding it difficult, if it doesn't work, remember that constraint is still connected to that object. Delete it and try it again. You know? Again, the idea of that offset that I was talking about, when you apply, these values start to show up. If it's too crooked or something, I could like say, nope, I need to make just a small adjustment, change those up, so it's going, you know, down, and then it's down that way. So that's where those offset comes from. Again, not the best way to use it, but if you know you need to, you can play with those. So that's how you make a character hold something. Again, that point constraint can be applied to obviously a lot more options. Again, we use it when just regular, you know, rigs and things. But for a character holding an object, I suggest your point constraint. Again, if rotation is involved, if you have a larger, you know, long object, use the orient constraint with it. And then you should be all set. So this is obviously a much shorter tutorial, a nice little just concept thing for you. I hope it works out for you guys. If you have questions, let us know. If there's something small like this that you guys, you know, want to know how something works, let us know. You know, write some comments so we can actually help you. We haven't done some tutorials in a while because we were had a little break, and now we're back into our class schedule and are trying to, you know, make things that are useful for everyone that is learning, not just our own personal students. So we do know we have a lot of visitors from really around the world, so we thank you guys for listening to us, and we really hope that our tutorials help everyone that are learning Max and Maya. So like us, share us, have fun.